Foundations
I can't
class.
get to it so fast.
Following Mary.
See you guys are right early. Should have a good day. How about Mr. Ken back there? Would you mind opening us up with a prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the day. Thank you for all you have given us this day. It was a prayer asked for Rose. But Lord, you know her name, you know her situation. She has surgery supposed to be tomorrow Monday at noon. I pray that Lord, you know her situation. I ask you to just accept the surgeons in the city, all of that is supposed to be in the room at the time. I pray that you guide them and give them what they need to do. And ask, Lord, for the family, I pray that you just comfort them in whatever's going on. And ask prayer for just me and my family, as well as Pastor Rusty and Pastor Rick's family, and all that's here in church today, as well as the ones on the way, as well as the ones that can't get out of the house. Lord, I ask you to just guide all of us in the way we should go, not the way we want to go, the way we should go, in your word, in everyday living. And Lord, just bless the people that are running for election. Lord, I pray that you, whoever you have decided to have in that office to run this nation, I pray that we, as Christians and as a people, as a nation, I pray that we will support that whoever that individual is.
Yes.
And Lord, I just ask all this in your name, Jesus.
Amen.
All right, just a little bit of overview. Today's a little different because we're going to be having a quiz later on for those of you that are ready. I know some of you have been here for a while, so if you're not ready for it, don't want to take it, that's no problem. But we'll probably go to about 10 o'clock on the lesson today. Today's lesson is fasting. And you guys all practiced this last night, right? Because you all got up this morning and had correct fast, right? So you all know how to fast. What's the difference between fasting, having breakfast in the morning and breaking your fast at night, and the Bible fast? What is the difference? They both involve going without food, right? So how is biblical fasting different than what we all did last night?
Pray during the time.
You should pray during the time. That's good.
It's intentional.
It's intentional. It's giving up food for spiritual purposes. That's what we talk about biblical fasting. When we talk about biblical fasting, we're talking about abstaining from food typically. Now there's a Daniel fast. What was different? Anybody recall what was the Daniel fast? How's that different?
It was all vegetables.
All vegetables,
And it was a special situation.
special situation. How long did it go for? Does anybody remember? 21 days. 21 days. I actually had, several years ago, I was teaching on fasting class like this, and somebody came up to me afterwards and they said, yeah, I know it's important, but I'm diabetic. I said, okay. I said, I understand. I said, well, you make sure you talk to your doctor before you do anything. I said, but, you know what you could do is that you could just take a day and just have raw fruits and vegetables for a day. And that could be your fast. Now, it would be safe for you because you can still take your medication. And you know what their response was? They went, in other words, yeah, I don't like raw fruits and vegetables. I have an excuse, and you're messing me up here, because I have a good excuse for God, for fasting. So fasting is not pleasant. It's not something that we yearn for, and it reminds us of how powerful food is in our lives. Food has a powerful influence, and one of the purposes of fasting is to help us realize how we are so affected by other things. And probably the classic, hopefully we'll get into it today, probably the classic section of Scripture, if you ever want to study fasting in depth, Isaiah 58 talks about, starting at verse 6, verses 1 through 6 talk about the wrong reason or the wrong motives of fasting. The verses, I think, 6 through 18 talk about the purposes, what takes place. There's tremendous benefits when we deny our flesh, when we deny our natural desires. But we'd all have to agree that they're powerful. Think about it, the very first sin on earth was over food, wasn't it? It was all about food. Isn't that amazing? Remember, Esau sold his whole birthright for a bowl of soup. Food has a tremendous influence on us. And a lot of people complain about it. It's true that you begin to fast, you get headaches and your body just aches. Well, what you and I are saying to God when we fast is as powerful as food, as much as I enjoy food and want food, I'm more hungry for you, God, than I am for food, as powerful as it is. But what I'm saying is I'm more hungry for God. So fasting is very, very powerful. It's also very difficult, but it really is, it's kind of the expectation the Lord has. If you look at Matthew chapter 6, where it's one of the key parts of Matthew chapter, it's a great chapter. I mean, there's tons of things in there. One of my life verses is in Matthew chapter 6. But Jesus, the disciples come, remember they say, teach us how to pray. Like John taught his disciples, so that's where we have what we call the Lord's Prayer. And one of the things that Jesus says, I think in verse 6, he says, when you pray. It wasn't like if you pray, or if you feel like praying. He says, when you pray. Well, in that same chapter, verse 16, he says, moreover, when you fast. He didn't say, if you feel moved by the Holy Spirit to fast. If you feel led, he just says, when you fast, he gives instructions of what to do and what not to do. So fasting is very powerful. So we'll talk about that until about 10, a little bit afterwards, and then we'll spend time, a few moments. I usually spend time at the beginning reviewing last week's lesson, but since we're going to have a quiz, those of you who are taking it, we'll review the quiz questions, so you'll be ready to go for that, and then hopefully by about 10 after, or even a little bit less, we'll pass out the quizzes. For those of you taking the quizzes, for those of you who are not, I have the yellow application sheet, that you normally fill out, which is a follow-up to what we talked about today. So we'll go through that. Any questions or comments about that before we get started with fasting? Where we get started? All right, so let's get into our lesson on fasting. Again, when you have your notes, I don't really follow your lesson because the assumption is you read the lesson if you had it, and that you already kind of know them. So I try to accentuate what fasting is, what the topic is, so I won't be following along with your lesson. All right, so again, I already mentioned this, but when you're fasting, I'm denying myself, denying my natural desires, which are powerful, just a desire. And then when the Bible talks about fasting, it rarely talks about fasting from liquids, from water. Because if you recall when Jesus, the famous section in Matthew chapter 3 where Jesus fasted for 40 days, remember they went out into the wilderness, fasted 40 days, was said at the end of those 40 days he hungered. It didn't say he thirsted, he hungered. And actually it can be pretty dangerous. If you go more than, say, 72 hours, more than 3 days without water, you can die. I mean, it's a very, very, our bodies need water. And there was one time in the Bible where there was people that fasted water for 3 days. You recall who that was, and what the scenario was for that? They didn't drink any water for 3 days. Remember when Esther was called upon to go in to see the king, she says, you don't do that. If you're not called and he doesn't extend his scepter to me, I'll die. They'll kill me. You don't just come in and say, hey, I want to talk to the king. You had to be summoned. And so to do that was very presumptuous. And so she said, okay, I'll do it, because her uncle Mordecai says they're going to kill all the Jews. They're going to find you out, even don't think you're going to be hid just because you're the queen. They'll find out that you're Jewish and you will die. She said, okay, but I want everybody, I'm going to have all my servants, I want everybody to fast food and water for 3 days. That would be very difficult. That would be very taxing. Again, it's very dangerous. Now, we can go a long time without food. Your body can go a long time without food, but you can't go a long time without water. So be very careful of ever doing that. And when you do fast, make sure you increase your water intake, because your body will begin to dump out. It starts to get rid of it, starts to cleanse itself. You actually give your internal organs a rest, which they don't usually get. You know, we're usually keeping the machinery going because we eat right up until the time we go to bed, and as soon as we get up in the morning, boo, we're chowing down. So it gives your body time to rest, and when it does, it begins to get rid of a lot of toxins and junk that your body stores up. And so that stuff is dumped into your bloodstream, and you want to be drinking water to flush it out, get rid of it out of your body. So when we're fasting, it's an act of denying ourselves and placing God at the center of our life. And we're saying that, Lord, I'm more hungry, more desperate for you than I am for food. As much as that is important to me, it's more important to me than food. So when Jesus' instruction was to his disciples, says, when you fast, it's something that he was calling us to do. And actually, he was criticized. Remember, there was one time the Pharisees were criticizing and saying, how come John and his disciples, they fast, but you don't have your disciples fast? Does anybody remember how he responded to that? What did he say to them?
About him being with them at the time. Jesus was with his disciples at the time.
Yes.
That's the reason why.
Yeah, he said they don't mourn while the bridegroom is with them. He said, but when I'm gone, they will. He said they will fast. And so it's a form of us. It's a realization that he's not here right now. We're looking forward to him coming back. Things that happen when we fast. Some of the benefits: getting closer to God during times of times of difficulty. 1 Samuel 31:13 says, "Then they took their bones," and this is after a defeat for Israel, "and buried them under the tamarisk tree at Jabesh, and fasted 7 days." So when there was a time of mourning, remember when David had the son with Bathsheba and the baby died, he fasted, while that baby was sick, and was hoping that God would have mercy and spare the life. So when there's a time of grief or there's a time of difficulty, a lot of times we will turn to fasting. And Esther, when I mentioned before, says that in every province where the king's command and decree arrived about the Jews being killed, there was great mourning among the Jews with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Another purpose of fasting is really to humble ourselves before God. In Ezra 8:21 it says, "Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river by Ahava, that we might humble ourselves before our God." And fasting is very humbling. I mean, it just reminds you, boy, how dependent. You begin to get a headache, or you feel weak, or you feel irritable. I mean, we realize how weak we are without food, and it really is a very, very humbling experience. It's sort of like prayer. Prayer is very humbling because you're giving up of your time. You're spending time with someone that you can't see, right? And you can't reach out and touch him. You really can't talk like we talk to another human being. We can talk to God, and he does respond, but it's just not the same as having flesh there. But it's a way to humble yourself. It's also a way to get guidance. And I know a lot of you have probably experienced this. When there's a difficult time in your life and you need direction, you need to hear from God. In that same chapter of Ezra, it said that they humbled themselves before God to seek from him the right way for us. So fasting enables us, hopefully, to gain greater clarity, being able to hear what God is saying to us. How do I handle this situation? What decision do I make? And fasting will help quiet down ourselves, and hopefully enable us to hear from God as we fast. And a lot of times, I want to caution you that I've had people say to me a lot of times, I'm fasting right now, and I'm not really getting anything. I'm not really getting any direction. But a lot of times, the direction comes afterwards. You don't always get it. Just like when we pray, we don't always see the answer to our prayer right then, do we? But we're not looking to right here, right now. We're looking to the long run, and we know that God has a timing for things. It doesn't always happen, but it sets up prayer, releases God into a situation, releases him into my problem, releases him into my family, and it allows him to begin to work out his plan and purpose. The same thing with fasting. It isn't something we're going to see right then and right there. There's a process of time. So we'll get guidance from the Lord as we fast. Helps us to make spiritual decisions. In Acts chapter 14, it says that when they appointed elders in every church and prayed with fasting. So that, again, that ability to make the right choice, the ability to make the right decisions. Fasting gives us a clarity, an ability to quiet down all the voices in our mind, or the thoughts. Our minds tend to race, and when we fast, we slow down. It just makes the outward noise to dissipate, because we're becoming focused on the Lord. In Acts chapter 13, it says, and he ministered to the Lord and fasted. And then the Holy Spirit said. So after they had ministered to the Lord, after they fasted, then they were able to hear. They were able to hear what the Holy Spirit was saying. Again, that's what fasting does. It gives us the ability to hear with our spirits. And so, and obviously we're ministering to the Lord. It's something honoring to God. And that brings us to Isaiah 58. If you have a Bible and you want to follow along, I meant to print this out and print it out, but just ran out of time. But in Isaiah chapter 58, it gives us probably the premier chapter, the premier teaching on what takes place when we fast. Like I said, the first 5 verses, he talks about how they were fasting for wrong reasons. We can do the right thing, but have a wrong motive. That I can pray, which is good, but sometimes I pray, my kingdom come, my will be done, not his kingdom come. I want to pray so that God will do things the way I want them done. Am I the only one that does that? Good. We sometimes feel like we can instruct God prayers how for me to tell God how this should work out. And here's the best way, Lord. This is how I see it. And if you'll just get on board with this, everything's going to be really good. But that's not how it works. So we can do the same thing with fasting. And again, fasting is no panacea. I wish there was one thing I could tell you, boy, if you just did this, Sandy, then everything's going to work out in your life. But that's not true. Prayer is important. Reading the Word is important. Worshiping is important. Gathering with other believers is important. But there's not that one thing that if you just do this one thing, then you're just going to live on the easy street, Andy. It's just going to be no problems from here on in. It's no panacea. But I do believe fasting is something very powerful, another adjunct in our walk with God. And again, it's something that the Lord has called us to do. And I don't always like what God has called me to do, but he knows how things work better than I do. So in 58 verses 1 through 5, he talks about how they fasted for the wrong reasons, and that he would not honor those. But then beginning in verse 6, he says, is this not the fast that I have chosen to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke? Wow, that's a mouthful, that one verse. If we just receive those benefits, that would be a tremendous blessing. There's just a number of things that he's talking about, just the things that hold us back, and all of us can probably relate to. There's areas of our lives that I wish I could change. I really see this area in my life. Now, there's people who speak to my life and point out things, and I appreciate that when people show me my weaknesses. But I'm well aware of a lot of my weaknesses, and I'm well aware that I have tried to change those on my own, and it hasn't worked. And so I need God's help, and God's saying, if I will fast, I'll humble myself and fast, he'll begin to break those things that are holding me captive. It could be wrong ways of thinking. It could be wrong ways of speaking. It could be wrong ways of acting, whatever it is. But God will begin to, as I fast, he'll begin to break off those bondages. Those could be things that people have spoken over my life. It could be generational curses. They could be attacks of the enemy. It's just all kind of things that we need to release from. One bit, just while I'm thinking about it in terms of fasting, I want to be a little practical here, because a lot of times we talk about these grandiose things like prayer, but then a lot of times we don't give people practical ways to develop their prayer life, practical steps, because we can't just go from saying a couple sentences a day to all of a sudden you're interceding 2 hours a day. It just doesn't, that leap doesn't work. You can't get in shape physically overnight. I can't lose 20 pounds overnight, or whatever my goal is. I know it takes a process. That same principle works in spiritual things. It's usually a process of time. Does anybody have any practical advice for fasting? Maybe you've done this, or you've tried this. Maybe challenges you've had, or advice that you've learned over the years of fasting. Anything that anybody can share from personal experience? Dennis?
Padlock everything so you can't get in.
Okay, all right. I hadn't thought of that one. That's probably a good idea.
That's what I need to do.
Yeah. You just probably need to say, Bobby, don't let me eat or drink anything, right? She'll.
Oh, well, yeah, but then he says, don't bring cookies into the house, and then goes to Walmart and brings them home.
That's what God speaks to you. He may tell me, I remember years, a long time ago, God told me, I don't want you to turn the TV on for 2 weeks. Because it was something in my life you need to get control of. Well, you know, if I had come to the house and said, all right, everybody listen up. We're not turning on the TV. Kids, Janda, we're not. No, God didn't say to tell your whole family. But you know, if I feel like if I'm going to be in pain, then I don't want everybody else to be in pain. And so we tend to project that on other people, don't we? Because I feel like if I can't have any fun, then you guys don't have any fun either. You know? No, he said, I told you, don't put that restriction on your family. So I was just sitting around thinking, gee, I wonder when is somebody going to turn the TV on? Is somebody going to watch a show? I can't turn it on myself, but I'm just hoping somebody wants to watch. Does anybody want to watch the ball game? Or, you know? So what are some things about fasting? Is anybody can share it from personal experience, things that have helped you, or that maybe mistakes you've made? I've got some mistakes I'll share with you in a little bit.
I have. I think it's good to not get discouraged the first time you try.
Yep.
And definitely when you're first trying it, set time periods. Just that way you're not thinking about when you have to end it. Know when the end is coming.
Yep. And that, to me, that is a key. I would like to plant this thought. If you haven't fasted, maybe you have tried it, it's been difficult. Think in terms of, because a lot of times people say, well, I'm going to fast. I'm just going to fast breakfast tomorrow. One time I asked the person, what do you have for breakfast? Just curious. I said, I just usually have a cup of coffee. Okay, so you're just going to give up a cup of coffee. Well, I'm sure that could be a real challenge to some people, but don't think in terms of meals. Think in terms of time, hours. For instance, all of us in this room are used to going at least 8 hours without eating, right? I mean, you got to stop eating at some point, and you got to go to bed, right? And you got to get up and take a shower, whatever, before you have breakfast, however that works. But we're used to 8 hours, or whatever your schedule. Look at whatever your schedule is. Then the first time, if you've never done it before, just say, you know what? I'm going to go 10 hours. 10 hours with no food. I'll still drink water, but 10 hours. And then if you make that one, then the next time, I'm going to go 12 hours. I'm going to go 12 hours, whatever time you stop eating. That way you don't have to figure out, meal, blah, 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 blah. Just think in terms of time, with your goal being, at some point in time, you get to a 24 hours where you don't have any food. And if you haven't tried it before, I would encourage you to maybe drink, in addition to water, go ahead and drink some fruit juice or vegetable juice, something to get sugar in your system, because your body, because we as Americans, especially our diet, we are addicted to sugar. It is in everything, and it has a powerful influence on our body. That your body will really crave that sugar. And so maybe a little bit of orange juice or apple juice, whatever you like. But I would drink some juices until you get acclimated, till you get used to it. Because you don't want to set yourself up to fail. Then you get discouraged. You say, oh, I tried that once and I got the bad headache, and I couldn't function. I was grouchy with everybody, blah, blah, blah. So set yourself up to succeed. Think in terms of hours without food. And just see what is the longer stretch that you typically go in your natural day, and then add 2 hours to that. And then the next week or the next month, add 2 more hours. So build yourself up. Just like if we all had to run a marathon, we would go out and start running 26 miles tomorrow. We'd start little by little. Because what, if you tried to run 26 miles, you just realize you get all sore, you fall down, you pass out, you say, I can't do it, you give up. But you got to start little and grow little by little. So think in terms of time and set as your goal 24 hours. My eventual goal is I want to go 24 hours without food. And it would be nice if you go 24 hours and just drink water. But until you get there, drink some juice, do whatever it takes to help your body begin to gear up to that. And your body will adjust. It'll gradually adjust over time. And that's why I also say I would encourage you to try to do it on a regular basis. If you read church history, almost all the big names that were really godly men and women, when you read their stories, every single time I read in there, they fasted. And most of them fasted on a regular basis. Most of them fasted a day a week. And some more. I remember John Wesley, you could not be, this is back in England, back in the 1700s, but you could not be an ordained minister through his organization as a pastor unless you fasted 2 days a week. I think it was Mondays and Thursdays until 4 in the afternoon. Anyways, they had very stringent, but set it as a goal and set yourself up to succeed. Think in terms of hours, and drink some juices. I remember when I started fasting. This is a long time. Actually, I was going to Evangelist Temple with Gene Spike, and there was a message on that. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to fast, and I'm not going to eat food. I'm going to do 24 hours, and I'm going to just do liquids. I'm not going to be go too hog wild. And I started thinking about it. I said, well, I like milkshakes. That's a liquid, and McDonald's right up here, and so I was popping milkshakes all day long. It was probably wasn't the right way to do it, but I got started. Going without food, and then eventually I realized that's probably kind of cheating, drinking milkshakes or Dairy Queen milkshakes. But hey, got started. I fumbled, and made some mistakes along the way, but you've got to start somewhere. So good, the time element. Anything else anybody else has learned when you've tried to fast, or maybe you have fasted, anything that has helped you?
Anything we do is baby steps.
Uh-huh.
Anything. We don't start cooking Thanksgiving dinner until we did eggs and hamburgers and
Yeah.
anything.
But we don't tend to think, we tend to think spiritual things should be automatic. If God's gonna use me in the gifts of the Holy Spirit, I should be proficient, never make a mistake, and that's just not realistic. I don't care how good a cook you are here today, I'm sure you've burned a number of things. I'm sure you've ruined a number of recipes.
I did that the other day.
We all have our relapses. But
It's a sacrifice.
but lawyers, it's called a law practice. They practice law. It doesn't mean they don't make any mistakes. Doctors have medical practices. I think we all know that doctors make mistakes, right? So we have to practice spiritual things. It doesn't just happen. And we will have our mistakes along the way. But how many of us, that are parents, and the first time your kid got up to walk and fell, we said, oh, that's terrible. Just forget it. You don't know how to do it. You can't walk at all. Well, why would God treat us that way when I make a spiritual mistake? He's saying, way to go, nice try. Come on, let's try that again. Get up again. That's what God says to you and I. I know there's probably somebody here that's tried it before, and you fumbled, in terms of fasting. You just say, okay, I can't do it. I feel like a failure. God's saying, come on, yeah, you can do it. Let's get back up on your feet, and let's try that again. Because God is always encouraging us to grow. All right, anything else somebody's done fasting-wise that has helped you, or you can give advice to?
This flower here was fastened on my head. I killed it.
That's okay. He's got good taste. He knows where the good
Thank you,
stuff is.
Dennis.
He knows where the good stuff is.
Oh, heaven.
Some 40 years ago, Lynn and I, our whole church fasted for 1 week. That was the first time I had ever fasted.
Really?
I can still remember how delicious that food was on the 8th day.
I bet.
Yes.
Now you broke in real easy, though, right?
French onion soup.
Yeah.
But the purpose of it was to determine the focus that God wanted the church to do.
Yeah.
And the general impression came back from everybody putting together what they felt the Lord had said, was that we were to send disciples out into the world. And some 8 or 10 people from that congregation became Episcopal priests.
Wow.
Plus doctors went out,
Yeah.
kind of with the Doctor Without Borders. and
Yeah, yeah.
He convinced that it was worthwhile.
Yeah, wow. How was that for you personally to go, had you fasted before that
I
yourself?
had never fasted before.
Really? Wow. And you went a whole week without food? Do you remember, was that extremely difficult?
Juice.
Oh, yeah, juice, okay, okay.
But I had to make bologna sandwiches every noon for a couple of guys who were working.
Sure.
So that,
Yeah, you gotta be very careful, you gotta, especially with a physical job, you have to be very careful about it, you know, hopefully you do it when you're not working, because that can be very, very difficult. If you got a physically demanding job, well, any job, I mean, it's hard, as much as it brings clarity to your mind, sometimes it's hard to concentrate, because you're hungry, and your body knows that, and there's things going on. You have a hand up?
I've seen a lot of forced fasting in jail. A lot of guys put this outright due to whatever they going through in jail, they would just stop eating. And in some cases, I've seen guys stop.
As like a protest, or?
Just anything.
Got
Basically, the norm would have been because of the food, bad tasting in the food.
So it wasn't that big give up anyway.
No, and you know, some guys would protest because they would stop them going to gym. They would go to the gym once a year, allowed to go to the gym once a week, and they would stop them. So they would protest, stop eating because they wouldn't allow them to go to the gym, stuff like that. But as far as actual fasting, I never have seen it. I have experienced 2-3 days without eating. And one day without drinking no fluids at all. I have did that myself. And
For spiritual reasons, or because of medical, or?
just to see how far I can go.
So
Was no journal purpose in doing what I did.
So you wasn't doing it for God, you just
No,
want to see,
no,
okay, yeah,
no.
yeah. I mean, if you look at a lot of the major religions, a lot of them, I mean, other religions, not, they have, fasting is incorporated, satanic rituals, I mean, there's something powerful, either for the good or for the bad, but there's something about, especially when people come together, that's why God told them they were building the Tower of Babel. He said, hey, there's anything they can't accomplish. That wasn't something for God. So there's something about when people come together, but there's something about fasting in the spirit realm, depending on who you're doing for. It is a powerful, powerful tool. Powerful tool, yes.
I think it should be clear, people really should not fast liquids because their kidneys will shut down.
Not longer than 3 days is the
You
max.
really shouldn't.
Yeah, so, and again, when you're fasting, you want to increase your drinking, you want to increase your
Yes.
fluids.
So would broth be considered okay?
Yeah.
Again, it depends on what your goal is. If it's a water fast, then obviously would not, but if you're just going on a food fast, then obviously yes. I mean,
That would be strengthening.
yeah. A lot of, and if you ever read about Bill Bright, was very famous for his 40-day fast, but he would have in there broth and other fruit juices or whatever. A lot of times they're, a lot of times the juices you buy in the store, they're processed, they have chemicals in, they have a lot of sugar in, so if you have like a juicy where you juice your own, you can juice your own apples or carrots, it's just a lot better for you than the processed.
High sodium.
Yeah, they put a lot, because it's processed, and they have to put sodium and sugar in to make it taste better. When you make it fresh, it tastes very good.
But according to what I got out of the lesson, fasting is to give you more time to pray and to worship and to just be with God. It's not just giving up food.
Right, the idea being that you turn to God, that you focus on God, right.
Some denominations fast before communion.
How long?
Well, just usually that, I mean, the Roman Catholic Church, for
Yeah.
instance, I mean, they know they're going to church, like, and they're gonna receive communion,
Yeah.
they fast before they receive it.
Gotcha.
Not, it isn't necessarily a long period, it's just,
Yeah.
you mean that day before they,
And they
Right.
will also give up
And you-
something at Easter time.
Right.
and once you fasted, you're to go back onto food slowly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. People make the mistake, they go, okay, I've been fasting for 3 days, I'm having myself a dinner, and then you pile in, you kind of undo the good you just did for yourself physically.
You're gonna go grow.
Right, or Stacy's or any other place where it's all you can eat food, yeah. The idea is to learn to control yourself, not, deny yourself and go hog wild afterwards. But I would encourage you to really pray about that, and it's something that you want to do on a regular basis. Don't wait for it to be, every 10 years or every 20 years. Again, if you read the major people in history, there was a regularity in the, some people every Monday they give up breakfast, or they gave up, they didn't eat on Mondays, or whatever day it was. But it's something you should do, just like prayer. You don't want to pray, have a weekend of just intensive prayer, and then you don't pray for the next 6 months. No, you want to, it's something that should be constantly a part of your life. All right, well, we're out of time. We'll close that on fasting. Now I want to spend a little bit of time reviewing for those of you who are taking the quiz. What's our memory verse for the quiz? Those of you and 2 Timothy 3:16 says what all reprove, correction, for teaching.
To retrain, correction, and
Training righteousness, yes. So, again, you can do it this time, you can do it next time, you don't have to do it this time if you don't want to. But that's the memory verse for those of you that want. Make sure you write down what translation you use.
Hey,
Right here,
Pastor.
yes, sir.
What translation is on the card that you gave me?
I'm pretty sure it's, I think it's New King James Version, New American Standard.
I don't know, it doesn't say, it just says all scripture is inspired by God and
So
Father.
if you use that one, just put down the card you gave, so I'll know.
I can do that.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, let's do some review questions. Remember, I teach to the test, right? I always teach to the quiz, just like they do in school. Don't want you to be surprised by anything. Here's one, should be question mark. Fasting is an Old Testament tradition only. True or false? False. It's for today. Jesus taught fast. He said, when you fast. We read the book of Acts. The church came together and they fasted. Prayer requires both talking to and listening to God. True or false?
True.
The lake of fire is a temporary place for those awaiting judgment. The lake of fire is a temporary place for those awaiting judgment. True or false? False. What is the temporary place? Hell. And then what happens to hell? It's emptied into the lake of fire, right? How long do we say a millennium is? 1,000 years. What is the central hope? The central hope of Christianity. Our very first lesson. The central hope of Christianity is what? The resurrection, right? If Jesus didn't resurrect from the death, then what hope do we have? That is the hope. If he didn't defeat death, then how can we expect to? What are the 4 areas that you and I as believers, we're going to all stand before God on Judgment Day. He's going to evaluate our lives. And he's going to look at 4 major areas. What do we say those 4 major areas are?
Treating of other people.
Motives, how you treat other people,
Faith. Motivation.
Faithfulness to your calling.
what's that calling? So we say calling, motives, treating other people, and our deeds, what would be our works, right? Our works will be judged before God. When we talk about, the Bible talks about supplication. What is supplication? What's that?
Extreme.
Yeah, it's a very strong prayer, right? Prayer with supplication, very strong, very, very intense prayers to God. What's something else here? You guys are good. The spirits of the righteous dead are with Christ right now. True or false? The spirits of the righteous dead are with Christ right now.
True.
True. The judgment seat of Christ is for unbelievers only. The judgment seat of Christ is for unbelievers only. False. You guys are good, see, this is it, you got it, you got it, you got it, it's gonna be easy, it's gonna be easy. Any questions or comments about that? All right, so I will go around and get everybody the yellow sheet. And those of you that are taking the quiz, I'll give